Dobrý deň, alebo dobrý večer, podľa toho, kedy nás, milí naši priaznivci, sledujete. Vítam vás na ďalšej zo série.
Afternoon or good evening, depending on when you're watching this online conference, which is yet another of the series of the online conferences taking place at our website between November the 16th and December the 16th, 2021. It's been organized by the permanent conference of the actors in education, and the event is organized with the support of the Partnership 2030. We're going to, in the series of our conferences, we are discussing 5 topics that concern more than 100 of platforms and civic organizations covering all stages of education concerning the development in education for the next 10 years and beyond. It's quite important in this respect to mention that on Thursday, the commenting period for the inclusion in education and the policies concerning this is coming to its end. Personalized education and the way it looks in practice is one of the topics that we are focusing on. Personalization in education means that we need to facilitate the education and make the education accessible to each and every person in a best way, in the way that suits their needs the best. It's a grand topic. It's the topic that's being adopted by progressively thinking teachers all over the world. In today's debate, we will introduce 6 panelists coming from the Czech Republic, Iceland, Switzerland, and Slovakia, and I really hope that you would be interested to hear what they have to tell us. Let me start by introducing our panelists and our guests. We'll start with Mr. Baraňaj, Ladislav Baraňaj, whom I believe you already know very well from our YouTube channel or from our website. You represent the organization called School Network. So could you tell us what it is that you are currently focusing on in terms of inclusion and education and personalization in education? The floor is yours. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening. For the last 10 years, I've been trying to offer guidance to the schools and the teachers on the road to their development. That basically means that we should not wait for someone else to come and save us from the external environment, but that we need to define, identify, and discuss the important topics so that we are really looking forward to coming to school, if we are teachers, if we are students, or if we are parents of the student. And it also means that we need to work towards creating a value and making sure that the children and pupils and students leaving our schools are ready to go into the world and they are ready to make their dreams come true. We believe that we need to give voice to the teachers, to the principals, but also to the parents, to the society, and to the students on how this can be achieved. Thank you very much, Mr. Baranay. So I believe that what is of key importance in order to give each child a chance to flourish in education really depends on the atmosphere in the school and on the community, which is unique for each and every school. And this is something to build upon. We also have Miss Jana Bavolarova here. She's a principal of the elementary school and kindergarten from Budimir near Košice. Miss Bavolarova, can you tell us what is the point that you have gotten to when it comes to this interesting and modern topic of inclusion, perhaps integration, what we like to call it in the past, or perhaps even personalization, which is taking it a bit further at your school? Thank you very much. We are the elementary school and the kindergarten in Budimir, which is a municipality near Košice, the city of Košice in eastern Slovakia. And we are the catchment area school for 9 municipalities, and we have almost 600 students. We believe that the change can happen from bottom up. And we believe we do not need to wait for some sort of wide national reform, because our teachers are parents and our students are capable of telling us what it is that they need, and we can work with that. A couple of years ago, we ventured on the road to include, or road of inclusion. And I like to say that even though this road is long and challenging, it mainly requires the change of the mindset in both the teachers and the parents. And I have to say that we're proud that we're successful in making the change happen. First and foremost, it needs to be visible in the teachers working with the children. And the thing that we managed to do was to establish a very supportive and facilitating and enabling atmosphere at the school, which we believe is very important. We have a high level of trust among the teachers, among the students, among the parents of our pupils, who are really who really trust our schools. This enabling and supporting atmosphere is not only aimed at the children who can work with teachers, with logoped, with a speech therapist, with the school psychologist, the special needs teacher, and so on, but we also offer the support to our teachers. We have internal mentor, we have a coach who is working with our teachers, because we believe that we need to care for each other at the school, and everyone has to be cared for and accounted for at the school. We also need to make sure to include all the children, regardless of their unique features. They might be coming from the disadvantaged social background, but they might have other differences, being different than the others. And we try to sensitize the children towards that, so that they are sensitive towards each other, to tolerate the differences among them. And also, another thing that we deem important is raising the sense of responsibility in our pupils, that they are responsible for their actions, they are responsible for their behavior. At the beginning of each year, our students define their personal goals in the hobbies, in the spare time activities, in terms of their educational activities, and we also try to direct them towards volunteering. Thank you very much. You've already used the word inclusion, and before I move on to our next guest, I would like to just rephrase something that I've heard at one of the OECD seminars, where teachers from different countries were discussing. And when they were asked to define what is inclusion, perhaps compared to integration, what they came up with was that integration is an effort to include the children in an existing system, while the inclusion is an effort to accommodate or adjust the system to the needs of each and every individual child. I think this is a very nice point of view, or basically notion. And if you wanted to comment on it, please feel free to do so at any time. And with this, let me pass the floor on to Vít Beran from the elementary school in Kundratice, which is one of the neighborhoods in Prague, the capital of the Czech Republic. So I would like to ask you, where do you see the role of inclusion, and how are you doing in fulfilling this concept? Thank you very much. I've included the link to our website in the chat section. First and foremost, let me say a big thank you for having me in this interesting discussion on the very interesting topic. During a previous discussion before this meeting, I managed to understand that we are all in the same boat, and that concerns how do we perceive what is a good education, and how can this how can we implement it in the real life? We have a long-term program of critical thinking in writing and reading. We have about 30 children per classroom. But even despite that, we have managed to create the atmosphere in which students like to learn, they're happy to learn, and they learn with joy. They can guide their learning or education process, and they respect the others. And if you went word by word, thinking of what I've said, it is what it is that we do as the teachers to make sure that our students are implementing their full potential when studying. It also concerns what the students are doing. My fourth speaker said that the children like to see each other and meet each other at school. And I think this is also something that's very important. We really try to have the atmosphere that is accommodating and allowing everyone to learn and to grow. Even the teachers have to be able to learn, because the person that's not capable of learning themselves cannot teach the others. We have a lot of pair teaching uh, on the different projects, but also thanks to the support coming from our parents and from the state budget. The pair teaching means that we plan the education together, and we lead and organize the educational process together, and we also monitor the outcomes together. And by doing it, we learn a lot. And it is very important to being able to identify where the children currently are and what we can build upon, because this is basically the point of departure for our planning. This is the point of departure for what we can do, what it is that we can prepare for the students and for the pupils. Many experts say it's very important what is the way in which the teacher is teaching. We very often rely to Helen Kimberly as the professor, and also we have Professor Kostialova as a Czech expert, and some other um, experts who have been involved in drafting different programs, such as We're Teaching for the Success in Life or Teacher's Life and stuff like that, who are really trying to help us understand that by teaching, we're learning as well as the teachers. And I have to say that it was thanks to it how to distinguish between when being a principal, to distinguish between the paradigm uh, of what it means to be the head teacher or the director of a school in the old thinking, when it was more directive way of management, to the new understanding when the head teachers or principal has to be a leader and an enabler. Thank you very much for this. I believe that this tone will be also uptaken by Ms. Kiripolska, the co-founder, and the director of the elementary grammar school in Bratislava, Edulienka. So I would like to ask you, what is your unique selling point in terms of, or in reference to today's debate? I think it might be quite unique when I tell you that officially our school was only established this year, but we had an homeschooling group established for more than 6 years. What we missed previously and why we established our schools was the lack of personal approach to each and every child, and accommodating and accommodating their needs. So the personalized teaching and the lack of personalized approach in teaching was was the very reason why we opted to get out of the traditional system of education, and now we're coming back to it. So it's basically going the full circle in a way. So we're talking of 6 years of cooperation, practice, experience, working with children, with parents, and with other institutions that are open towards education. And what we focus on is the contextual teaching. It's using the context and personalized approach. And I believe that the context is a key word for personalized education, because we need to, in order for the children to be able to uh, take responsibility for their own development and education, they need to know where they are, what it is that they need to improve, where to improve their, say, communication skills, social skills, and how they can use the environment for their benefit. And I believe that these are the three main pillars of the education that we follow. We have quite an extensive support team. We have about 15 pupils per classroom, and the supporting team uh, are is not only composed of people that are there for to work directly with the children, but also with or they include the people who are working with the context, who are showing them the wider consequences and circumstances. We had, for example, the position of what we called a climate man, someone who was focusing on climate and how to incorporate it into the education. And we are striving to ensure the best potential or best support possible for each and every child. You said that you have about 15 children per classroom, but your school is slightly different. When we're talking classroom or class, uh, shall we imagine the traditional classroom as we know them from the schools, from regular schools? Yes, basically you can imagine a room, but maybe later we can talk about the way we operate, and that's slightly different compared to regular schools, because we are also part of the pilot verification project uh, of educational aims and objective, which basically means that we have cyclical education. So we have different cycles. So we have cycles grades 1, 2, 3. Then the second cycle is the grade 4 and 5, and then the third cycle is basically all the grades above. And that basically means that teaching in cycles means that we are teaching the same content of education in sort of spiral in different grades, and children can move freely according to their interests and according to their skills between the grades in between this inside of the cycle. So this is perhaps also another unique point about our uh, our system. We only have verbal evaluation so far, and when we talked about the open education and partnership atmosphere, we are also open towards other institutions that are supporting our education. And we are not only working with pedagogues and teachers as such, but we're also working with people that come directly from the field. So they have very authentic experience. We have a programmer teaching our children. We have an HR director or HR manager that are already teaching our schools, our children too.
So now we see what we are talking about. This introduction just gave us some orientation. Yeah, thank you for your lower speed, because it is recorded in English. Mrs. Skripolska touched the topic from the last week, curriculum, content of education. And she indicated that our next guest, Mr. Petra Otrčková, you are working in Switzerland, in German-speaking canton, and you are a member of ISEA, Association of Slovak Language Teachers. And these are teachers of Slovak for children and parents living in various parts of the world. Would you like to introduce your Swiss system? So, in a rough outline, How do German-speaking cantons in Switzerland approach personalization and inclusion? It must be complicated because there are so many language groups in Switzerland. So before our debate, we had a conversation about comparing Slovakia and Switzerland, and you mentioned that Switzerland is still conservative in some issues. But some basic things, what could we take as an inspiration from Switzerland? Thank you for the invitation, for introducing me. I am Petra Ondrčková. I work in Switzerland as a member of ISEA, Association of Slovak Educational Centers. I work in Zurich canton, and I can give you one best practice example. On the topics we are talking about, it's not enough to spend 3 or 4 hours on these topics, but I'm going to speak about personalized learning, how this is possible in a standard education system. I will speak about support of pupils, parents, and teachers. Last week, these 3 entities have to stick together. We talk about supporting the pupils, developing them, but somehow we forget about teachers. I hear so many ideas on how to support the teacher, but I don't hear it in this 3-item combination. So, and in the third part of my speech, I would like to clarify the diversity. I think it's a connection in all topics in life and in pedagogy. The perception of the diversity, the sensibility to the fact when somebody is different can open some options that we have not seen before. They existed, but we have not seen them. Mrs. Bavolarova, in her school, where she is the principal, she applied the possibilities offered by the state educational program reform 2008. She and her team, she really did revolutionary changes in Slovakia. And I think there are other principles like her in Slovakia and in the Czech Republic. We are creative. We have a lot of good ideas. So these 3 topics are the topics I would like to talk more about. Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that we have a representative of Iceland here, Mrs. Eda Oscarsdottir from the University of Ireland. So could you tell us more which part of inclusion or which side of inclusion you consider to be the most important? I mean, how the school gets closer to the pupils. So what's most important for you in this aspect?
Yes, thank you for this question. I think the most important thing is for teachers to get to know the learners, to really know what the students bring with them to school in terms of their cultural backgrounds, their language, their interests, and what we could call resources, their personal resources or trends of knowledge, as has been coined. And then the teachers can use this information as they organize their teaching, as they try to be responsive to their students' needs and keep the goal of learning in mind, and offer a variety of ways to reach the goal of teaching. So in kind of in the spirit of universal design of learning, you would think about the end goal of what you want the child to learn, and then you think about various ways to reach that goal. And then in choosing those ways, you think about what you know about the children and how you can get them interested and get them responsive to what you are aiming in your teaching. Of course, I agree with what has come here before me, what the people before me have been talking about, that the teachers should never be alone in this task, because it's a big task. They need to be supported by other teachers, work in teams, have access to support both with from other teachers and maybe from specialists when needed, by assistants, and most importantly, learning, work in a learning community that that helps them to develop their teaching practice and each other's teaching practice, because I believe that this is best done in communication, collaboration, and discussion.
Veľmi pekne ďakujem, Eda, za
Thank you very much for your introductory reply. Maybe when you are watching us, we have one gentleman here, Mr. Tomáš Feršek, my colleague, moderator for crisis situations today. So thank you so much, dear guests, for your introductory speeches. Well, there is one paradox, or maybe not a paradox, at the first sight coming out from this discussion. We are talking about inclusivity, about personalization of teaching, when the school starts to accommodate its system by means of teachers and parents to enable each child to be successful and to use their best talent. On the other side, you speaking about sensibilizing children, about making them sensitive to differences, mutual respect, and I understand that it's not only the school who tries to approach children in this way, but the school teaches the children to have a similar approach to the rest of the world. It means they teach them how to accept other different people or schoolmates, how to accept them as they are. If this concept is working, then definitely the children come out of the education system stronger. And here we come to the definition of well-being. I was looking into various definitions of well-being and how our guests are going to use well-being. It's Australian definition, which says that well-being is a combination of emotional, psychological, and social health of a student. And then it reflects how children feel in life in general. Even the teachers should have their well-being. But well-being leads to better results, better mental health, and to more responsible decisions in life. It means that children are able to make better decisions based on the fact that the school enabled him or her to do so. So let's go to some specific examples. What works here in Slovakia? Mr. Baranej, could you share your experience? Because you are working with some top experts of Slovak pedagogy, such as Mr. Zelina. Where in Slovakia personalization works? What is your practical experience, and what are your recommendations to the schools who would be inspired? Thank you for allowing me to present something Well, we help our schools to move forward. Before we started to do it, I realized that in Slovakia we do not have any pioneers. I mean, some 10 years ago, I went abroad to look for good quality schools in the US, Belgium, Finland, and I was trying to start cooperation with them and create a communication bridge based on data. But at that time, I was watching TA3 television station where I see one school in Poprad. It was integrated school. I saw how this school was living, that there is a culture of joy at this school. So I went to see this school, and it was very surprising to see that there was no school ring, no bell at school at the end of the lesson. There, there were no masses of kids leaving the classrooms at the same time and being noisy. It was very quiet, as if all kids were on holidays. So I tried to understand it, and I found out that the staff of teachers was really cooperating in a very good way, that the teachers were leading a dialogue with the pupils. The teachers really liked the pupils, and a special um, observation was that this integrated school has connected its educational role with the development of talents. So they created kindergarten, primary school, and the primary school for arts, for fine arts. And so all three of them were together, and every single kid was enabled to study and to develop their talents, either in drama, music, or dance, etc. So it was very visible that these children found themselves and that they experience creative freedom. So it means their creativity was not limited by any instructions, but these kids really lived and developed their potential. So, as we are a school network, we enabled other schools to go to Poprad and see it. And so every year, around 300 or 400 other teachers and school principals visited these schools just to believe that something like that is possible in Slovakia. So this was something, some breakthrough I experienced in Slovak education system, and I can't imagine the reform based on such schools where the culture is already developed, where the culture is already existing, as my colleagues mentioned earlier. So first we need to discover it, and we need to find out how this culture was built. So this is positive. And if you want me to mention something negative, what we face, many founders, many people do not understand their roles. They do not understand this concept. They do not understand that personality is important, and school should be a place for meeting, not a place for putting pressure on people who have to respect some instructions of some authority. Schools should be the place where people start to live their dream. It should be joyful place. So if you navigate me, I'll be grateful. But I think it was important to present it because it's my personal experience, and I think it's very important for Slovakia.
Pekne. Spomínate slova ako dialog, rešpekt.
Thank you very much. You have been using words such as dialogue, respect, and similar. And that leads me to the question I would like to ask Ms. Pavolarova. You're just a regular countryside large school. So to what extent can the ideas like the ones we have heard now here be brought to life in your environment? What are you proud of? Say, what are the things that you are proud of that you managed to recently put into practice? Something that worked well. Thank you very much for the floor. I'm very happy to be able to speak after Mr. Baranyai. I have to say that the joint school in Poprad was also the school which altered my vision of the entire topic and which gave me the vision of what a good school should look like. We actually organized a trip for the bus full of teachers whom we took to this open school in Poprad, where we attended the lessons and we had a chance to experience the atmosphere and the entire process firsthand. We had a chance to discuss with the people from this joint school in Poprad. So, for many of us, and in many aspects, this school has been a great inspiration for us. Our school is the joint school, the kindergarten and the elementary school. And I liked the connection very much because we've also seen it working very well in Poprad. And we also have a branch of the School of Art. We also host the language school, and we have courses in ballroom dancing and many other activities. So we have quite a wide ranging offer for our students, but also for their parents, which gives even the parents the freedom to have their children attend after school activities or extracurricular activities at the school. They don't have to drive them elsewhere. But the thing that I'm really proud of, to answer your question, in the recent years, say, we very often very much focus on the development of the personalities of children. We focus on dealing with topics such as friendship, responsibility, personal responsibility, and so on. And we link this to the language of communication, which we also see is very important because we think it's very important that we focus on positive language. We tend not to tell the children don't run along the school corridors, but rather try walking slowly or slower. We try to acknowledge children's successes, and these might seem as minor things, as details, but that's what really creates and forms the very pleasant atmosphere in the school. Thank you very much. Maybe the question for Mr. Baranyai now. Since we're talking about personalization, my question is, what shall a parent, an ordinary parent who very often are even less open towards changes than their children, how they should understand the term personalization? Thank you for the question. Personalization means that the children at school abandons the position of a disinterested passenger just being driven somewhere, just being or just going with the flow, so to speak. The child should abandon the position, and the personalization from the point of view of the teacher means that I should be able to give the child a space and abilities to identify and define themselves, to define their own objectives and aims. So a child should not be an object that needs to fit within certain form and rules, but a child should be a partner in discussion, a partner in conversation, and basically the education helps the child being a developing human being. So I think the concept means abandoning the seat of a passenger and getting into the driver's seat and take the wheel into their own hands. But that obviously requires calm teachers and pedagogues that who are not basically only concentrating on their internal conflict or conflicts with their management, for example. My experience from various schools actually shows that sometimes it even takes only one person to somehow pollute or poison the entire atmosphere at the school. You only need one toxic person. So I believe that the current situation when basically um, even not only our education but also our society is crumbling does not help to build such atmosphere at the schools. Yes, I believe that this is what we are witnessing sadly during the pandemic, that our society becomes more and more polarized. And I have to say that I personally, uh, being a student, I had a chance to experience the situation when I couldn't speak freely about my own opinion. Actually, my essay had to be uh, destroyed because of the idealistic regions. That was when I was 6, so it was under the totalitarian regime. But I think that sometimes this actually even survives. This notion or this approach survives, and this is 40 years ago. So the changes take time. Now, Ms. Kiripolska, I would like to ask you for your opinion about personalization. Do you subscribe to the notion of a student being driven, sitting in the passenger seat, and the student taking a driver's seat, being responsible for their own learning? Um, as I've mentioned, our school was established after the 6 years of working in the educational group. In order for all of the audiences to understand, basically, in order for our children to be able to include it in the educational group, we basically had the parents who had to basically take their children out of the regular system of education and opt for the homeschooling. And if you've encountered this is a great challenge because you need to provide the environment for your children uh, in which they can learn and in which they have to achieve the same outcomes and aims and objectives as the children that are being schooled regularly. And this is a very huge step and decision that the parents needed to take. They needed to start thinking about the education of their children, and they needed to think about how to do something for the benefit that their children would benefit from. So it required a lot of thinking, a lot of contemplating on the side of the parents. And usually they were also, or this also included their contemplation on what type of education would be ideal for them, for their children. And when a person opts to take their children out of the regular education, is to they already have some idea of what it is that they want for their children, and they're looking for something that would some entity that would provide this. And so my role as a supervisor of such education was to ensure that they get what they want. And I started with one child. I started with my child. And then when you are actually guaranteeing something like this, or you should guarantee something like this for more children, you suddenly see the coming to life of a system which doesn't follow any template, but which is adjusted to the needs and expectations of each and every child. So this is basically as if it was a natural development of personalization, the system as it should be. We have been working in the field of education for more than 20 years, and we only, after 20 years, we realized that only getting out of the system helped us understand what was the difference, because we understood basically the perspective from the outside allowed us to see something that we were not able to see from the inside. Okay, Ms. Kiripolska, let's imagine a student who doesn't know what she or he wants. How would you help them to find out what they have the talent for, what they're good at? Well, first and foremost, we need to communicate a lot. We need to talk together a lot because the communication and the dialogue actually makes children think about their interests, about what it is that they like. We're not asking questions, what do you want to be when you grow up? We need we need to show them and to realize what is the way in which they are thinking, how they behave, how they interact with the others, whether they prefer working on their own or working as a member of the group, whether they like or prefer the role of an active member or of that of an observer. And if a child is exposed to the secure and safe environment where all these things can happen, and if throughout the process the children are provided with the feedback by the people who understand the processes that are going on, then you can see the realization on the side of the children. Children are allowed to make mistakes, but what is important is and by mistakes, I mean in inverted commas, but together with the mistakes they get the feedback, what it is that has happened, how or why it has happened, and what can we learn from it, and what is it that we can take away from that knowledge. The theories say that in order for us to automatize some activity, we need to repeat it 10,000 times, and that appeals to everything. Even a child should say practice being in a defending position for 10,000 times, being in a position when they're defending someone else, being in the position of a leader for 10,000 times in order to automize it, to internalize it in a way. Children learn about themselves based on the interaction with the others, and this is what we have observed. This really reminds me of the concept of parenthood. Perhaps parents with more children would understand what I'm talking about, because each child is different. They need to accommodate their needs and provide for all of them. But with this, let me ask Mr. Beran, what it is that you do in Kunratice. How do you attend to this? How do you manage to get the best out of each and every pupil, or the most important thing, abilities from each and every pupil, so that they are capable of choosing their way? I would like to follow up to what my fourth speaker has said. What is important for all of us is to understand ourselves. We have a subject that we call the dramatic education, or the drama, which is connected with the social education. It's basically about the children teaching about themselves through playing roles, the role play. At school, very often communication is very important. But if we understand ourselves, if we understand the others, that actually has a very beneficial impact on the culture of teaching, culture of education, and the atmosphere in the school. I have a feeling that sometimes it would be enough if we, as the adults, treated the children the same way as we would like the others to treat us, to treat ourselves, because it's normal to do something that we are happy about, that makes us happy, that brings us joy. And the children have it the same. And it's nothing complicated. And if you manage to achieve this at school, then it's beautiful. And you're winning, because this is where the magic comes from. And then what is important is also the personal growth of the adults, of the teachers, of the pedagogues. How often do you remember your teachers? If you have very often we encounter the situation when the teachers basically taught in agreement with their typology. We have the teachers who are, or we believe that the teachers should be, for example, offering a variety of tasks to the children so that the children could choose the ones that they prefer, in which they are good, in which they have the chance of, showing their abilities. And that it's nothing complicated. That's nothing hard. In many of our lessons, we have 2 teachers or even 3 teachers in the classroom when we have the assistant teacher. And I actually liked it when an inspector who came to visit and to sit in on one of our lessons, when after the lesson he approached me and he told me that it took him 30 minutes to find out who is the teacher and who is the assistant teacher. And that's very important. Aim for allowing the children to experience success rather than the opposite, rather than showing them what they don't know. We should be evaluated and appraised for what we know, not for what we don't know. And failure is not motivating. How many people do you know who were motivated by failing at something? They might be motivated by fear, but fear is binding. It's restricting. But if you have the very pleasant atmosphere, enabling atmosphere, the atmosphere where you feel safe, where you feel good, the atmosphere built on the voluntary, on something that's voluntary, I think each of us and each child should be able to make a choice and to choose what it is that they want to do from the list of tasks, for example, or whom it is, or whom they want to work with. That's very important. And it gives them responsibility. And responsibility and the feeling of accountability is very important. And it's a big topic in our school. I don't know what is the situation in Slovakia or in Switzerland, but unless we as the adults are not accountable, it's very difficult for us to want it from or to seek it in the children. We need to teach the children to be responsible and to be accountable for their decision. But we have to start from ourselves. We have to show them that we are accountable for the things that should be functioning at school. The school, for me, means the building. And many people think it's the building, but I think we need to associate it with exploration, with revelations, with trying things, with revealing things. Once I was asked by a person, or I was actually told by a person, that the first grader only learned how to read, write, and count. And I told them that it's not true, because they are exploring the world. They are learning about the world. It's not about learning to read and write, because children actually can read in a way. Also, a long time before they actually learn the letters, they can read through the pictures. They can explore the world. They can, just investigate. And I think this is what is very important.
Well, quite obvious things, but still not obvious for everybody. Now let's go to Switzerland. You mentioned 3 pillars. So let's go step by step. We've heard about personalization, and you mentioned a new document being prepared. So how does this document think about personalization? What can you see in your Zurich canton? How far did the schools go in accommodating of system to the students? Well, on personalization in learning, it's about the system. In Switzerland, there is all system and order. And reform Lehrplan 21 was built between 2010 2014, but implementation is still going on. So I would like to summarize it's the need. One class should be led by one teacher longer than during the first level of the primary school. So we have 1 to 4th grade, level 1, and one class teacher, and then grade 4, 6, again, one class teacher teaching all subjects, and then grade 7 to 9, and there are various teachers in the class. But we have one wonderful thing here in Switzerland. We have one subject that is called People, Science and Society. And this subject covers all specialized subjects in Slovakia. What does it mean? This teacher really has connected physics, chemistry, history, biology, and yeah, the subjects that we teach here in Slovakia on the second level of primary school. And it is very important. We're talking about relationships, about knowing the children, about communication. And when we talk about the possibilities, how to teach in an interesting way, how to develop the pupils, when we talk about the need of teacher to have the students during various subjects. So this is one of the options, that one subject covers several areas, several subjects. We use project learning very often in Switzerland, where kids are led to strengthen their own self-esteem, self-awareness. They are enabled to present their projects. And on teachers, well, it's one class teacher, but this class teacher has an assistant, not for all classes, but for some of them. Sometimes they have 1, 2, or 3 assistants, except of a standard assistant or the second teacher supporting the main teacher. There is also a specialized teacher only for lessons where the pupils need more visualization of the topic. So then the main teacher can fully focus on children, on their interactivity. And behind his back, there is this specialized teacher who is doing visualization, for example, drawing some picture related to the topic of the lesson, or some calculation or something for those who need some support. Well, we are talking about inclusion of pupils with special education needs, but we have also students with different speed of learning, with different level of intelligence, or they are in borderline, and simply these pupils need different methodology. So that's why there is this specialized teacher who knows the class and who knows the children individually. And this specialized teacher knows that, okay, if we are learning about this topic, so then I need this or that tool, or this or that methodology. I need to show different way to this specific pupil to help him or her understand the topic. So it's about support. Except of the main teacher, second teacher, or specialized teacher, we very often can see also the teacher who is devoted to the support of language competency in German language. I have mentioned in Switzerland, and especially in Zurich canton, as you know, there is a huge migration in this region, and there are many nationalities, 171 nationalities. So it's really necessary to have this language support. For example, in the context of what I talk about, there is also support for the pupil. And all this is also support for the teacher. The teacher can devote to what the teacher needs to be devoted to. And in a case of some unexpected situation, there is always another person in the classroom who can help to settle these issues. Or there are two people who can help to settle. And on the assistants in the classroom, well, this assistant does not have to be a member of teaching staff or somebody with teacher's education. It can be a volunteer, a parent, or somebody who simply would like to help, or somebody who is available. And of course, somebody who's interested to be a teacher's assistant. Why am I talking about it? In Slovakia, many teachers would love to have such an assistant. Maybe at the beginning, some teachers would have a problem with that because like having feeling, okay, somebody is following me, but they can get rid of it very quickly. And this brings me to the third topic, and it is the sensibility, fine senses, that we work with something that is new, unknown. And here we need the support. We need to support the perception that, okay, this is something new, it's different, but it's okay. And now, one thing, when we talk about the education system in Switzerland, I'm asking myself, what is the output of education? I'm unhappy when I hear about mandatory school attendance by the age of 16. And then after the age of 16, that's not our business. I would like to mention that this sentence is said differently in Switzerland. They say each child has a right to education, but each child should get the education that when they leave the education, they are able to make their living. It means they are able to make some money to get a job. Because we can talk about here about sensitivity and other wonderful topics, but at the end of the education should be a person who is able to take care for himself and live a life, make his or her life. And in Switzerland, this is really very well organized, that children go through education up to the point when they are able to take care of themselves. That they have choices of various professions, but here I do not have space to talk about it. Well, this was very inspiring. When you talk about selection of professions, well, that's the point, that the students find some professions. Mrs. Bavolárova, in your school at Budimir, I was inspired by Mrs. Ondrchkova and her language groups. In your school, you have many Roma students. Do they speak Slovak language, or do they have some handicap? And are you somehow trying to help them overcome this language handicap? 10% of our pupils are Roma nationality. And they are not the pupils from the excluded Roma communities, not from marginalized, social weak Roma settlement, but at home they use Roma language, which is their mother tongue. So there is certain language barrier, especially in the first grade, and we are fully aware of it. We are trying to strengthen the knowledge of Slovak language. The second group are Roma pupils who spend some time outside of Slovakia. Here in Eastern Slovakia, it's very frequent that whole Roma families are leaving. They live abroad for some time and then they come back to Slovakia. Or the children are born in the UK or Belgium and they come back to Slovakia at the age of 8 or 10 years. And here we have to emphasize the knowledge of Slovak language. We also involve English teacher into the education, and some tasks or some texts are also translated into English. For certain period, we enable these students to communicate in English. So there are various forms of language support that we apply. Thank you very much for your example. And now question for Ada. Question for Iceland. Ada, you have mentioned in relation to your work where you are dealing with the teaching of teachers. So how are the teachers educated to be able to cope with these requirements of personalization, to be able to provide each child exactly with what this child needs and requires? How are the teachers prepared for that?
Yes, well, I can give you examples of what we do in Iceland and in the courses that I am teaching. I take examples exactly from one course that is called Teaching Diverse Groups of Students, where we have teacher students coming in and also teachers that are coming in for further education or their professional development. And this is also teachers that teach at the preschool level and upper secondary level and then at the compulsory school level. So we have a very diverse group of students or participants in the class, and it's a master level course. And what we do is that we focus on how to put their mindset to looking at the problem with, in inverted commas, the problem of inclusion as something to solve, something that they have to solve, not something that the government has to solve or the principal has to solve for them, but how can they do that themselves? And so we ask them we go through and teach them about innovative education. And innovative education builds on the questions of what is the problem and how can I solve it? How can I brainstorm some solutions towards finding a way that, that something that I have myself, some solutions that are easy and I can do them myself, but also solutions that maybe someone else in my school has, and we can bring it together to get to find a solution. And this takes about a month to get people to think in this way, because when they come into the class, they have this idea that some of them have the idea that inclusion is not very possible, that we can't do it because we don't have the resources, we don't have the money, we don't have the people, and the principal is not supporting me. So that's probably universal. You can probably all heard about it. But after 1 month, of course, we still have some people that are disbelieving or, do not want to go there. But we have more people that are saying, okay, it's a part of my responsibility. I can do things, and some of them are quite easy to do, quite easy to change within my. They are within my reach. I can do it myself, or I can ask someone around me to help me. And some of them, and then we do projects where we ask them to find things that they need to work on and solve, and how they can do it. How, look into their professionalism, look into what has been written about education, learn about formative assessment, for example, as a way of assessing students without just judging them at the end of the term thinking about how can I help the students learn through assessment, and that, like you have been talking about here, talk about how we can use ideas like, for example, Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. How can we use ideas from universal design of learning, that we try to design learning so that more children have access to it. So it's not just accessible for those who are in the middle, and then we have to add something different for those on the different ends of the spectrum. But we try to have like a smorgasbord, like a selection of all kinds of things, and different ways of how you can solve things. And we try also, as we are teaching the course, to be examples. So we are not just standing up there and giving lectures to teachers, but we are teaching as we would like them to teach in their classrooms. So a lot of discussion is going on, a lot of group work, a lot of hands-on things. We ask them to bring Lego blocks and make models of education, and they kind of first like, I'm not a child, I don't use Lego, but it helps them think, and it brings their ideas to other things. One thing that we are battling with always is that we ask them, when they are turning in their assignments, that they can use all kinds of creative means that they want to. They can create videos, or they can create art pieces or poems or whatever, but most of them turn in an essay.
Mhm.
It's because they've always turned in essays. So if we never start to tell them that they can be creative, they won't be creative. So it's like you were talking about here earlier. If a child always is expected to do things in a certain way, they can't certainly tell you what they are interested if you've never asked them, for example, or they haven't even experienced all kinds of education, then they all kinds of things to do in education, then they don't even know that this is what I'm interested in. So so I think it's what we need to focus on in teacher education is to think about, we are building professionalism. We are not making technicians that can take something and use it in the classroom. We are creating professionals that can think about theories and think about what has been written and researched about education that works. And we also need to think about how we are teaching as teacher educators. So we are setting good examples of how we would like classrooms to look like, and what education should look like for children.
Ďakujeme veľmi pekne za inšpiratívny pohľad.
Thank you very much for your inspiration.
Máme posledných 15 minút približne, tak by som chcel, aby sme v nich urobili také dve ešte
Yeah.
kolá.
Colleagues, we have about 15 minutes left, so I would like to have perhaps 2 rounds of questions, and I would perhaps ask you for no longer than 1 minute answers from all of you. The first question is, what should a state or the system do in order to allow for the introduction of the changes? So which are the things that should be abolished or withdrawn? And on the contrary, what should we do for the schools to be given freedom? So what perhaps particular things might be important from your respective points of view? So we have Petra raising her hand, speaking from Switzerland. Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief, even though it is quite difficult. I would like to stress the importance of further education and personal development of teachers, because even though I haven't been in Slovakia for quite some time, but I think the system of education and further or lifelong development, further professional development of teachers in Slovakia, which can be dubbed as the chasing of credits, might sometimes be counterproductive. I think that oftentimes it does not lead to the thing that we planned for. I would like to show you my experience from Switzerland. The teachers have 2 times a year. They have one day when they educate themselves during their working hours at their school, and they can select the topic or the area in which they want to develop, in which they want to improve. I think this is very good because teachers can actually sort of order or give an order as to what it is that they want to develop in, because they might be facing some problem in the team and or so on. It's very comfortable for the teacher, and it's about, or it's contributing to their well-being, because we've been talking about the well-being, and the actual fact that the teachers can tell what it is that they want to be educated in. It's always topical, it's always up to date. I think professional development and further development of teachers is a huge topic that would account for an individual discussion, but it is very important. And coming back to your second point, when you asked about the support from the state, I mean, basically, I know there's a huge topic, overarching topic, and that's the money. I think there's one thing that I want to stress in relation to this topic. I do not know a single pedagogue who would work for the full time, for full time. It's very important realizing that I'm working for 3 days or 2 days a week, because working with children is very challenging, and I need 2 days to educate myself, to develop myself. It's unthinkable. If we think of the system that we have in Slovakia, that you have a full-time teacher that teaches 100% of their time, plus they have after school activities just to add a little bit more to their salaries. And still they are not having very good social position or recognition, social recognition as the teachers, which is not very good. In Switzerland, it's very good in terms, for example, of the social welfare and the social benefits that the teachers have. For example, their contribution or the contribution that are being paid to their pensions. Pension funds are very motivating. They can also come and attend the lessons led by their colleagues, which is very refreshing and it's very inspirational, because basically it gives them the chance here in Switzerland not to evaluate or assess the others, but to take inspiration from them, to draw inspiration from them, to learn something from them. So I think this system is very, very good. Thank you very much. I think that's very interesting and inspiring. Mr. Beran, what it is that you would welcome in the Czech Republic when it comes to the systemic support for personalization, where the system is accommodating and what could be done better, perhaps? I would like to follow up my colleague from Switzerland. I have had a chance to work with the group of people who are preparing the new rules, and these are the people from the National Institute for Education of the Czech Republic. And I have to say that I am sort of an opposition in the group, because I believe that academics very often talk more about the document and the content of teaching rather than the changes that are necessary in the process of teaching. And I believe this is where we need to bring change. And the things that are failing so far at the state level, and I think that applies both to the Czech and Slovak Republic, is to define what is the objective and aim of the reform. And I don't think that the aim is to draft a new curriculum as a document, but the aim should be to minimize the differences between different schools, so that we, for example, focus on basically taking a 10-year period that we would use to understand what is the impact of the way we teach on the children. And this is something that we cannot do at the level of the schools. We need to do this, and this needs to take place, and this needs to happen at the level of the state. But what we can do at the school level is the culture of teaching. And what my colleague was talking about from Switzerland, we have this at our school. We have peer learning here, for example. Each and every pedagogue from our school actually designs and develops and writes their plan of personal development, and they define which are the areas that they want to develop in, that they want to improve in. And when we have some holidays or some schools when we are not teaching, these schools are devoted to the further education of the teachers. And it's not necessarily a teacher attending some sort of course, but we are trying to share the experience. We're also venturing into the informal teaching methods. We are working with supervisors, we're working with experts who are acting as supervisors. And peer learning is something that is very strong here. But I have to say, what we call it the learning nests that we have, when we basically choose the leaders from among ourselves who are basically acting as consultants for further teachers when they are developing their personal development plans. We have the documents at the level of the school, which is not written from beyond the green table, or it's not being drafted by the principal, but it's the collaboratively written document that we are trying to, in which we are trying to understand where we're standing and where do we want to get. And our role is to help to facilitate, as the directors, I believe, our role is to create the atmosphere in which my colleagues could develop and could improve. And if I could develop and establish that atmosphere among the teachers will be able to spread it and apply it with the children. So we need to facilitate and establish the environment that's free, that's safe, that's supportive. And if we manage to establish it between the teachers, it would permeate all the way down to the students, but it must not be ordered from top down, but it needs to grow integrally. It needs to develop naturally. It needs to come from the notion that, okay, I personally know that I'm not perhaps doing that well in this area. I need to be able to identify the area and then perhaps look for the help from a friend, from a colleague, from someone who can support me. And that would lead to the change of the atmosphere, the change of the environment. And the things that are happening in the Czech Republic and in Slovakia, this is not happening, and that's not good. Before we get back to the Slovak reality, we have a question going to Iceland, to Eda. What it is that you are grateful to the state for when it comes to the framework that allows to translate the culture or change the culture of education and introduce inclusion? What were perhaps the statutory norms and laws that allowed you to bring on the change?
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So we had a new, our latest compulsory school education law is from 2008. And then we had the new national curriculum in 2011. And I would say that these two were, the biggest change that we have had, because they went from focusing on subject teaching and, what children should be knowing when they finish school, from focusing on the whole child, on the individual. What kind of person do we want to have when they leave school? And then we have pillars of education, or pillars that are based, the education system is based on, there are 7 pillars, and they are things like equality, health and welfare, creativity, literacy, and so on. You know, so they're big ideas, and these ideas should be visible throughout all of the education stages, and in all of the subjects or projects or whatever you are going through as you go through the education system. And I think this was revolutionary, and also the way that children or students should be evaluated was also revolutionary, but and supported our way to do this. We have a very distributed system, so that there is the municipality that has most to do with schools more than the state. The state provides legal framework, but the municipality has to do with the day-to-day running of the school, with the school principals, of course. And this has also brought the kind of the leadership for school and schooling more closer to the people and to the schools. What has been lacking, though, to follow this broad and very broad-minded kind of framework, is the money that followed. So that the way that money was distributed to schools is still, or has been, it's changing now, but it has been based on the idea of special needs and regular school. So there has been like baskets of money going to school based on how many children have what kind of disability or something, or a diagnosis. And this is changing now slowly. So they are taking into account more what kind of social environment is the school in, you know, what kind of, are there many children that come from bilingual households? Are there many parents that are out of work, and so on? So they are taking these things into account and creating a new kind of rule for how to distribute money to school, without thinking about only the diagnosis or disability of students. But this was, I think, the main hindrance towards inclusive education in schools.
Veľmi pekne ďakujem za...
Thank you very much for this very interesting input. So perhaps what Miss Ondrčková from Switzerland was talking about when she said that their aim is to prepare the students to be the fully fledged members of the society. The Icelandic approach also includes engagement, well-being, and health and happiness of the young persons finding their way into the society, and that's very interesting. And that might actually be a very good inspiration also for the Slovak environment. And with this, I would like to ask my Slovak colleagues, where do you see the biggest failure in the system, and perhaps what would help you to implement your visions in our system? Mr. Baranyai, I've been waiting to utter this for a very long time. As we can see even here, a director is a key factor, because he or she defines the language, the culture, and the atmosphere at the school. The way whether everyone at the school are allowed to realize their value, if their value for the school is acknowledged. I even had a question coming to mind whether we should call the schools, whether it shouldn't be something like a studio of complex development. For me, because that also includes the notion of art, development as an art, and art as development. So for me, it also encompasses the participation, creation of the atmosphere at the school that the school represents, in which the school represents an ecosystem that is capable of supporting the development of all its parts. And for this for me is sort of a fascinating vision, and I would be very happy if we could somehow reach out to uh, the talented young people and to show them the beauty of pedagogy and to somehow attract them to start thinking about pedagogy perhaps as their career choice. But obviously this has to go hand in hand with good wages, with apt wages, so to speak. Because if we manage to get such culture and to establish such culture, uh, it would permeate the entire society. When I went to Finland, where they have this culture of education, I've never met a policeman. I don't know what a Finnish policeman looks like. While in Slovakia, we're almost like a police state. So I think this has wider implications. But there's one other thing I think is important to stress, and that's the stress to stress that education is not the world that's being bound and it's about tying and putting someone into a certain shape and or form, but about letting someone flourish. Ms. Pavolarova, what would you say on that? What helps your work and what hinders your work? Well, I think there is a space you can find if you're looking for it when you want to personalize the education. I don't think that there are too big the restrictions on the side of the state. But what I would expect from the state more is the support for the teachers, because the biggest asset that the schools have are the people. And you need to care for the people, you need to invest in the people. It's almost like in any other company. But you also need to require and expect a lot from the teachers, and from the people. So it's about the offer. It's about giving the people space to grow. As one of my four speakers said, even in our case, our teachers have personal aims and objectives that they set each and every day, each and every year, and it concerns their personal growth and their professional growth. They know where they need to improve, where they want to get. And if we're talking of well-being of students, we need to remember the well-being of teachers as well. And I think it would be great if the state allowed the uh, the teachers to say after 10 years of teaching to allow them to take a sabbatical, for example. I think the workload of the teachers is too high. We know that it's very challenging as a work. Very often, the teachers, apart from teaching a high workload, they also lead certain after school activities in order to improve their salary, so to speak. So they are running a very high risk of burning out. Uh, so yes, a teacher can go for for several years, but not for 30 years. So we need to also cater for the needs of the teachers. Thank you very much, Ms. Bavalarova. Ms. Kiripolska, you have you have experienced the system. You've gone out of the system, so you have the experience from both sides of the line. So what is your opinion on that? What is your point from above at the system? I think what we need when it comes to inclusive education, personalized education, and all that, we need support, not pressure. In Slovakia, very often everything needs to happen immediately and for all. If we're talking of the a personalized approach to children, we need to have also personalized approach to schools. If a school is ready to implement personalized or inclusive education, let's help them. If some people are not ready for that, we should not pressure on them. We should not press on them, because that creates animosity and reluctance to do this. And at the end, everyone's losing. So we need to support those who are ready, and we need to respect those who are not yet ready. We need to give them time and support. And the time will come when they will be ready, when they see examples of good practice, for example. For example, we've heard this at the beginning. We've heard about the joint school in Poprad. If it worked there, it served as an inspiration for a number of schools, even the ones that we have with us here today. And it has the snowballing effect. This is how the systems change. It's not about imposing a change from now on for everyone and we say it would work and in 10 years time we'll have the change completed. This is not the way forward. And another thing which might be even more tangible is that I don't think that the personalized and inclusive education is a matter of changing the people and changing the funding or the finance. What is a much bigger challenge than that is the teacher training. And it is very important that teaching faculties started to prepare the graduates who are not teaching subjects, but who are teaching children. That is at the very basis. Currently, we have teachers coming to the classrooms who are excellent in teaching a subject, but they don't count on the children. They forget about the children. And unless we change that, unless we see the importance of establishing the supportive and enabling environment for the children, we can't expect any change. Thank you, Ms. Geriboska, for your almost like a wake-up call, the words that are almost like a wake-up call. Now we're approaching the end of our debate. So I would like to ask all of you to perhaps come up with a closing idea, what it is that you liked, or was there something that you liked particularly, something that was interesting, something that was inspirational from your colleagues, or is there a message? What is the message that you want to leave with the audience? Mr. Baranyai, let's follow the alphabet. Thank you very much. Our harmony is the word that comes to mind. The fact that we almost share a very similar, or if not the same DNA. We need to work together for the good of the others. I think this is the mentality and the mindset that we need to introduce in the public space. So I think this is the message which I want to voice. And thank you very much for having me. Thank you. I think harmony was it could be felt throughout this debate. Ms. Bavolarova, what was inspirational for you, or what is it that you're taking away from this debate? I also have to say that I also had the feeling throughout this discussion that we're on the same page, and that includes also our guests from abroad. But I think what is important is that we always think about our students, about pupils. We need to take into consideration the environment they're coming from, what are their needs, and what is their current situation in life, because this needs to be accounted for. Thank you very much. Yet again, and it might almost sound as a cliche, but I know it's not the cliche, that you're stressing the importance of children and the fact that the education should be children-centric. Thank you very much. Ms. Kiripolska, was there anything inspirational for you today? I think what was very pleasant for me was the feeling that we're not alone in what we are doing. We might have felt alone previously. We might have felt that we are wasting our energy just hitting the wall, but and trying to defend what we were doing. And it feels very nice to see that we're not alone in that there are more of us doing this. And I believe it will be more widespread. Definitely not for everyone, but for a wider group of people. I often encounter the situation that when I'm talking to the people, I try to listen whether they understand what it is that I want to tell or what I'm saying. And very often people have an idea, yes, it's okay, but they're only scratching the surface. But this discussion showed me that this is not that type of discussion where we're just going along the surface. But this is something that we are actually doing and implementing in real life. And that gives it a completely different quality. Because it's not about just talking theoretically, but it's about doing and putting things in practice. And that's why I'm very happy. And thank you for having me, because I'm happy to be a part of the change. Thank you, Ms. Kiripolska. Mr. Beran, what are you taking away from this discussion? There's one very important idea which basically was voiced almost by all the panelists, even though it might have sounded in different words or different words might have been used, and that's joy. In the Czech Republic, at the Permanent Conference or an association Permanent Conference on Education, we have a motto that we're teaching every pupil. And every is the word that sometimes is problematic, but because usually we're being questioned about that each child should be happy when learning. Not everyone can be happy, but this is our role as the teachers, that we ensure that each child feels the joy from learning. And it's up to us to be sort of the connected vessels. We need to come to schools with joy, and that would inspire and motivate the children to be actively engaged and to be able to experience the joy. Ms. Ondrčková from Switzerland. Are you taking away something? Yes, I'm always very happy when you invite me. And for me, the bulb moment, the moment of revelation is every time I experience it every time when I can feel the interconnectedness with the other panelists. I have to say that there are many things that I wanted to say, and I didn't because the other panelists have said them instead of me. And for me, this means that the change is already happening because there are people already doing things, and that makes me very happy. There's maybe one other thing that I would like to add. We should not only be talking and concentrating on the students or pupils, but also on the parents. We need to work with the parents. We need to involve them in the process, because if we don't work with the parents, it would be very difficult for us to speak and to find our way to the pupils. And then I have an idea. The doctors usually say, or the medical practitioners, that do no harm. We should say, do not hinder. And I think that's a very good motto for a teacher. Thank you very much, Ms. Ondrčková. And last but not least, our dear guest from Iceland, Edda Óskarsdóttir. Thank you very much for being with us. And are you taking away some inspiration from this debate?
Yes, I think it's always so very inspiring to hear people talk about education, about children, about how to teach, and teachers, of course, in such a way that I've heard here today. There is so much hope in it, because that's really what we need. We need to be able to develop our societies forward, to be able to have everyone involved and active and participating in the society. We need to develop schools that are inclusive and that are personalized, and that will bring people into the world that feel that they belong and they are a part of the society, not next to it. And I'm just very full of hope that we have people here that are thinking and working in this way, and they are doing it maybe despite the environment that the legal framework provides for them. And that just gives me hope that it can be a ground up approach, and those approaches are often very strong. So, but thank you for inviting me here today, and it's been a very good discussion.
Takisto, ďakujem vám ešte raz.
Thank you very much. And likewise, thank you very much to all our panelists, to all our speakers. Thank you very much to our audience, whether you're watching it now or whether you're watching it later on. I believe that maybe you could start establishing the notion of inclusion and personalization, being the teachers, being the students, being the parents. Please do so if you can. Thank you very much. Next week, we're talking about digitization. Thank you once again for your attention, and we're looking forward to our next meeting.